It's my pleasure to welcome Assemblymember David Chiu as our next speaker. As a member of the California State Legislature, Assemblymember David Chiu represents 500,000 constituents in the 17th Assembly District, which encompasses eastern San Francisco. During his first 6 years in the legislature, David has authored 64 new laws addressing a wide spectrum of issues, including housing, homelessness, transportation, education, environment, health, public safety, and civil rights. He has served as chair of the Assembly Housing and Community Development Committee and the California API Legislative Caucus. David previously served as a civil rights attorney, a criminal prosecutor, Democratic counsel to the U.S. Senate Constitution Subcommittee, a law clerk to a Ninth Circuit judge, general counsel to a public affairs technology company, and the president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. He is married to Candace Chen, a public interest attorney who runs a refugee foster care youth program. Welcome, David.
Good evening. Being asked to speak for 4 minutes on this event's themes of tech, equity, and community is like being asked to boil the ocean. But here goes. Technology. As a former GC to a small tech company, I know that many of you, as top attorneys to Bay Area companies, know the upsides of innovation. Lifting our standards of living, increasing our regional wealth, connecting us more deeply, moving us into the future. But while technology can be a force for good, we've all seen too many instances in which technology has reduced wages for working families, how automation has replaced unprepared workforces, how America's billionaires have seen net worths increase by 1/3 during this past year, by over $1 trillion. So while we're working to fulfill our attorney-client obligations, what are our broader obligations as a profession during these times? I'd suggest that the answer lies in the second element of tonight's theme, of equity. It's an understatement to say that equity is at the heart of what's at stake during this difficult moment in history. When it comes to who's bearing the brunt of this pandemic or this recession, it's an issue of equity. The brunt of climate change, an issue of equity. And certainly equity is at the heart of the recent discussion on racial justice. So again, what is our profession's responsibility to society, our broader obligation? I'd suggest our obligation is to address these inequities, to end them wherever we find them. This week, we celebrated Martin Luther King, who taught us that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Or put another way, inequity anywhere is a threat to equity everywhere. Whether it's who's getting COVID, who's unemployed, who's living next to the polluter, who's being arrested, whether you practice law in healthcare, labor and employment, criminal justice, the environment, we all have a role in this fight. My final thoughts on the third element of tonight's theme of community. As a former president of one of our state's largest ethnic bar associations, I know that those of you who are active in a bar association care deeply about community. You wouldn't be here tonight if you weren't. I want to thank those of you who contributed over 3,000 pro bono hours by this bar association this past year, fighting for those facing evictions during COVID-19, facing deportation by Trump's ICE machine, those enduring domestic violence. You've taken your obligation seriously of justice for all. Let me end by mentioning a call to service by a former member of the Alameda County Bar, someone I met 23 years ago when we were fellow criminal prosecutors. She answered the call to uphold justice by asking me to join a kitchen cabinet for her first run for public office, when she was polling at 6% in the polls. You may have guessed, I'm talking about the former district attorney of San Francisco, the former attorney general of California, and today the vice president of the United States. As we celebrate the rise of Kamala Harris, I think about how she would often say that for those of us who have the opportunity, it is our duty to fix the community. We can't sit on the sidelines while people are counting on us to see them, to address the things that keep them up at night, and to lead. So I say to you, thank you for fighting for equity. Thank you for fighting for community. Godspeed. Have a great night.